everybody, Javier here once again for another fantastic episode of Javier in the Air. This is episode 8, Bubbles and Beer. So before I get into the beer side of things, we're going to talk about the bubble side of things. So I had an interesting interview with a good friend of mine. We'll call him Gomer because that's what he prefers to be called. So Gomer had an interesting theory on bubbles, and it's not what you think. So it's going to be a little bit different than what you're thinking of, like just how do we make bubbles? How do we do that? So, and I'll also go a little bit into bubbles in regards to beer as well. So let's start it off right. So bubbles. I know some people think of various things when they hear the word bubbles. I personally, right off the bat, I think of Tiny Bubbles by Don Ho, which is interesting. I don't know why. I probably never heard the song in probably 15, 20 years. But when I hear bubbles or somebody says bubbles, I think Tiny Bubbles. Okay, so what we have here are some interesting things about bubbles. So, for example, I found by just a cursory search on Google, and you can do it as well, you can look about universal theory about bubbles, and this kind of ties into what Gomer is going to be talking about. Um, that there are bubbles everywhere in the universe. And how is that? Well, we'll hear from Gomer about it, and he'll talk a little bit more in depth about his personal theory on bubbles, which I found very fascinating. And I think you will too. I have to apologize. The Wi-Fi was dropping in and out, so I'm going to try my best to edit and cut out what I don't want from the video. I haven't done this before, so I'll see what I can do with that. So, bubbles of all shapes and sizes. They're all over the place. I'm going to give you a great recipe on bubbles itself. So if you want to try this with your kids, or you want to try it yourself, or you want to see how big you can make a bubble, by all means, please pass that on to me. Send me a video snapshot or an image of you and your biggest bubble. So here's the ingredients on how to make giant bubbles. This was given by a science institute out of Orlando and a couple of other places. I know MIT does this as well. So their recipe, the one from Orlando, is 6 cups of water. Prefer to be distilled, but tap water would be a fine substitute. Half a cup of blue Dawn dish detergent. The person who was posting this recipe said they used ultra concentrated, but however, they said Dawn Original is even better. So just go with the old school Dawn Original. Half cup of cornstarch. Corn flour, for those of you in the UK, I do have one or two people that actually are in the UK that listen to this. So corn flour for you guys, cornstarch for the US. 1 tablespoon of baking powder, not baking soda, because there's a big difference. I found that out the hard way when I first started doing baking. Baking powder is not the same as baking soda, and vice versa. So 1 tablespoon of baking powder, and then it said 1 tablespoon of glycerin. So you can get glycerin at HEB or your grocery store, more at your pharmacies, Walgreens and CVS and stuff like that. It also says our personal lubricant, which I'm not gonna get in. I'm not gonna touch that one. I'm gonna let that go. We're just gonna go with the tablespoon of glycerin. So you put all that together, and you basically find something, a hoop. You can, if you have an old bubble maker one that you have in the little bottle, you can also make your own. The largest ones I've seen, they took this recipe and expanded it into a small wading pool, and then they used a hula hoop to actually make the bubble. So we're talking about large bubbles, and we're not talking about little tiny ones, which will work out great. I mean, 6 cups of water, that's already a good sized flask as it is, so you're gonna have to find something for it to work in. But I've seen the wading pool ones, and they're outrageous. And one of the things that people forget is that bubbles don't have to be spherical. They don't have to be round. They can be any amorphous blob shape that you get depending on what you're using. So I know there's also been research on making a square bubble, and I think someone actually has, but I have never actually seen it. But let me see if I can look real quick for a square bubble. Yes. So what they're doing basically is they're tricking the not tricking, I guess you could say, but they're definitely doing some hinky stuff when it comes to bubbles. So what they're doing is, I wish I could share the image with you, but I can't. Just look up square bubble, and you'll see what they're doing is they're taking a cube frame or a hyperbolic cube. I'm sorry, not hyperbolic cube. They're taking a cube or a cube to cube type of thing, and then dipping that into the surfactant or soap or whatever they use, like that ingredients that I gave you, submerging it totally and then pulling it out. As they pull it out, it makes the bubble and it actually makes a square bubble. So they've found ways around it. This has been people have been studying this for a long time, from what I can tell from here on the internet. So check it out if you want to impress your kids and impress anybody else that's interested in bubbles. And I know for a fact that there is a giant bubble league that you can do where it's like a club kind of, where they make these giant bubbles and then release them and then video them so that they have confirmation of the bubble itself, and then they post it on this club. So I have yet to actually go into that. I don't know if I'm going to go into that, though I think it would be interesting to try to do that. Anyway, so I digress from what Gomer is going to be talking about. So his is more of a universal solution that has to do with bubbles itself, which if you look it up, it talks, some of the history behind it is they talk a little bit about Einstein and his theory of relativity and other things like that. But the bubbles themselves are another theory that has to do with superstring theory and some of the physicists that are out there talking about that. So it might be, if you look it up, it might be a little bit over your head. It was certainly a little bit over my head, which is not saying that much because it can be pretty high over my head. And but it's certainly very interesting. If you can find, I know I found an article out there that kind of gave you a high-level view of certain things about bubbles, and so you can definitely look it up and enjoy it. I think it's fun. It's a little thing. We're all kind of sequestered at home right now, so why not impress your neighbors, impress your kids if you have any, impress your roommates by going out there and creating some bubbles. I think that would be a lot of fun. You can certainly do it. I think the probably the more often that you're drunk, the better that you will enjoy it. At least for the adults. I know for the kids, they always enjoy making bubbles, and so give it a shot and see. Hopefully, I can get people to respond on this podcast with images, or you can send me images directly on Facebook with bubbles that you've made. I'd like to see sizes, differences, and see how crazy you get. I would certainly enjoy it, and I will post any that I get next week on next week's podcast. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Interview Hav. He's going to be interviewing Gomer, and like I said, Gomer is a friend of mine that I used to work with, and now he is going to talk a little bit about his theory on bubbles. So I'll get back to you as soon as Interview Hav is done, and I hope you enjoy it. All right, thanks. Thanks, Regular Hav. This is Interview Hav, and today we are interviewing Gomer. Gomer is a friend of mine that I also used to work with, and he has some interesting things that we're going to talk about. We're going to start with geology and work our way out into the universe. He also has a very interesting theory that I'm going to try to pick apart, and he's going to definitely smash me on it, or I might enjoy it. I haven't heard it yet, so this is going to be a first for me as well. So take it away, Gomer. Go ahead and tell us about your bubble theory.
Oh, we're going to have to work our way around the bubble theory, my friend. That's a thing that you sort of get to eventually.
Oh, okay.
So we start in the ground. They
All
start
right.
in the ground, right? So remember, like you said, I'm real into geology. I love my rocks,
Yep.
right? And I started thinking about the planet one day, and how the planet is basically just a sort of skin of solid rock on top of a molten mass, right? If you think about it, it's
Sure.
almost like a bubble of rock spinning out in the universe, right?
Okay. I'm with you. I'm with you.
Because I mean, what do you think about it? What's a bubble?
Um, normally something circular that has the same pressure inside as outside, and usually made of some sort of viscous liquid material.
Okay, so is the bubble the membrane, or is the bubble the stuff that's inside the membrane?
Well, not that's a good question. I would say that the bubble is actually the membrane because you can have a bubble of smoke, you can have a bubble of air, you can have a water bubble, you can have a lot of things. So whatever is contained doesn't necessarily make it the bubble. So I would think it's the membrane is the bubble itself.
Okay, so the most important part of the bubble is sort of the skin of the bubble.
Sure. Yes.
So, because it makes up the bubble itself, right? It is the thing that contains the other thing,
Definitely.
right? So it's the separation between this and that, if you will.
Okay.
Correct?
I can go with that.
The membrane, the skin of the bubble would be the difference between this and that.
Yeah. Yeah. I can go with that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, so like all the rocks in the world are sort of the skin between the molten part of the earth and the nothingness beyond it, right? So sort of
Yes.
we live on top of on top of the skin of a bubble, right?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Definitely a good way to look at it.
Yeah. So what's the atmosphere look like, to somebody in outer space looking at the planet? How thick is that atmosphere?
Oh, I guess from the outside looking in, it wouldn't look very thick at all. I mean, you'd have to get a cross section of it, but you wouldn't get a cross section of it because it's spherical or close to spherical as possible. So,
Okay, that's
uh,
why we call it the atmosphere, right? It's like a sphere
yeah,
of atmosness, right?
sure, yep.
So it's
So,
like its
so in
own
other words,
bubble.
it would look like a bubble because, and I don't. I guess there's no thickness level as far as bubbles are concerned. I mean, depending on the material you use, right?
I think it depends on your bubble. It depends on what that membrane is made of as to and what it's separating, right? The
Right,
bubble could
right.
be infinitely thin.
Yeah. Oh,
Hide things as bubbles.
I'm losing you.
We live in a quarantine bubble.
Sure. Yes. Good shirt. Good shirt.
We live in a political bubble. So we live on sort of either side of some sort of membrane that seems to separate us in a lot of different contexts, right?
Yes. Yep. Yep.
So that's kind of what I'm thinking about with my whole bubble theory. It's the concept of a separating membrane, something that keeps us in between this and that, is a leitmotif that I see over and over and over again in everything. I see it in the earth, in the skin of the planet that we live on. It's just a big bubble, right? I
Okay.
see it in the atmosphere that everything that we know of that lives must live in our atmosphere, right?
Yep.
I mean, do we know of any life on any other planet?
Not yet.
So the only life that we're certain about lives in this bubble of atmosphere, this little skin of our earth bubble.
Okay. Yep. Yep.
So
All right. So then let
everything,
me let me
yeah.
throw this at you. Um, Bubbles can merge with other bubbles and create a bigger bubble.
What's required in order to merge two bubbles?
I would think that they'd have to have the same surface tension. So they'd have to be composed of the same materials in order for that to occur. Like the only thing I can really go by would be soap bubbles. It's the same soap or surfactant, depending on how you want to call it, the same material, and they are able to then come and merge and become one larger bubble. At least, I mean, sometimes they may hit each other too hard, and I don't know all the science behind the bubbles, but you can form a bigger one. So would you say like two people have their own bubble, and then when they come together in a relationship in some way, form one bigger bubble around themselves?
I would say that that's an apt arrangement of words.
Okay. Excellent. Wow, that's pretty good. So if we are living on we're living on the outside of the skin of the bubble of the earth, then inside the atmosphere, but on the outside of the earth.
Well, some of us are. Some of us live underground, I suppose. So we live within the skin, but
Well, but the skin's really thick. I mean, we're still the skin. I mean, until you get to the core, would that be considered the skin, and the core is then yet another bubble because they've got that dense metal inner core? Or
so wait. Are you telling me that the Earth is actually a series of bubbles?
See, there you go. That
Did you just tell me that?
I did just tell you that. Yes.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. I'm starting to see that. Are there any other planets in our solar system?
Yes, there. Where are we at?
Generally,
9? 8?
Generally, trapezoidal solid shapes, or
Well, I mean, they're basically
objects.
They're basically spherical as well, especially the gas giants.
Right.
Which again, we're looking at another bubble specifically when you're looking at a gas giant, because it's mostly composed of gases, and so they're one big bubble somehow maintaining, probably due to gravity, and who knows what other forces may be involved, maintaining it inside. Mostly gravity, but I mean, you know what I mean, keeping it so that it doesn't just go away, because then that would be like an example of that would possibly be the moon or Mars. Maybe at one point there was an atmosphere bubble, something popped that bubble, and then the atmosphere was gone, possibly. Oh, did I lose you again?
Possibly.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm bubbles. You hear that?
Yeah, what is
I'm outside.
What was that?
Somebody with a big engine in their car.
Oh.
I live near an intersection. There was somebody revving it. You hear him?
Oh, nice. All right. So we went from...
So bubble theory, more about the bubbles. So you ever see that movie Contact? Remember that movie Contact?
Love that. I had the book. I had the book way before the movie.
The Carl Sagan book, right?
Yep.
So the Carl Sagan book, the Jodie Foster movie. So what was the significance of the distance of that star that we were from, right? There was a significance there. You remember that?
The significance of the star that they found?
The star was like 75 light years away.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vega. It was like 75 light years away. And it was because it took that long for some signal to get there.
Right, when we get back to here. So
cool.
All right.
So we were talking about Contact, right?
Yeah, talking about Contact. So go on.
So the movie Contact, it was the whole premise was that some alien species heard from us, and then we heard back from them in the movie, right?
Right.
So what did they hear from us? What was it that?
It was the Hitler broadcast of the Olympics.
Right. So it was like the first big radio signal that we sent out into the universe, right?
Yep.
Even though we'd been speaking by radio, before then, but it was the first really big one, right?
It was a really big one.
And so that signal went outward from the Earth at light speed, In which direction?
Oh, no idea where Vega is in the from the night sky.
But does it matter? How did
Well,
it get to Vega? We didn't send it to Vega. Hitler didn't decide to send it to Vega.
well,
Where
not
did it
on
get
purpose,
sent?
but they would have had to have been just uniquely the radio waves going out in that general direction that
Either
it
that,
expands,
or
or
I mean, what was the whole point of it being Hitler who did it? And the first big radio broadcast, it went out across the world, right? So that
oh, I see what
signal
you're
went
saying.
out in every direction.
Yeah, yeah,
So our first voice out into the universe, according to Carl Sagan and Contact, was essentially a radio wave bubble that we sent out from the Earth that traveled out at light speed and then went and contacted Vega, and then they gave us the plans for the machine, and all the whatnot happened.
gotcha.
But it made me kind of realize and sort of
Oh, losing you again. Nope.
fast, right? Suddenly, oh no, am I back?
Nope. Definitely not video. There you go again. Man, where are you? Are you in your front yard?
I'm back. I'm in front. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I don't get the best.
All right. Try to keep going.
Maybe I need to slow through. I need to be in my backyard because we're stronger, but the mosquitoes are also stronger.
Yeah.
It's like I doesn't extend, and like my Wi-Fi bubble and my mosquito bubble intersect in the backyard, and it's a
Wow.
real shitty
Yeah.
thing.
Kind of. No.
Let me take a walk.
All right.
Let's see if I can get closer to the router. Is this any better?
It's a little bit. Yep. So,
Is this any better?
yep, that seems to be it. All right. We won't go too much longer. So, all right. So, keep going. Radio signals go out. Carl Sagan decided in his story that it was the Hitler broadcast that would have made it out to Vega.
Right.
Concentric circles going out, basically, technically bubbles.
Yes. So, every light beam that goes out from Earth, every time a star explodes, we are seeing sort of the surface of that light bubble reaching us, right? So I think
Yeah,
about everything that happens in the universe happens in spherical shapes, and it happens in ever increasing. And I started thinking about that. And of course, the very beginning of the universe itself. I mean, what is happening in the universe right now? It's related to how the universe began.
well, I mean, there's a lot of supernovas that are going on. There's a lot of black holes.
Yeah, but what's happening with all the galaxies?
Well, it's
Where
still expanding at this point.
it's expanding, right? So the
Right.
entire universe is kind of like one of these light bubbles that we've been talking about. It is an ever expanding bubble, right? There,
Yeah.
logic dictates that there must be an edge of the universe where the first things that started universing are still out there expanding, right?
Right.
So what's that edge of the universe? What's the skin of that bubble like?
I don't know, man. That blows the mind right there. Not only that, but then you think about what's on the other side. Is there anybody living on the skin of that bubble?
So on the other side, if there is a skin to our universe bubble, there must be an other side to
Well,
that bubble, right?
again, logic
The
dictates.
very nature
There's
of a bubble, indicates that we're talking about the membrane, the thing that separates the two things, right?
Yeah.
So if we live in
Very
an ever
exciting.
expanding universe that has an edge, what is it separated from?
And will it meet another bubble and then become a bigger one?
Will those two meet like you were talking about before? Will
Yeah,
the
they
membrane
kind of
between
meet
them?
up and then become
So
bigger.
that's, I mean, in order for those two universes to become one, the membrane between them is going to have to disappear or break or, be popped.
Well, hopefully, hopefully not pop, as in pop bubbles usually don't fare very well. But if they merged, now if they merged, that would be something interesting. So, and
I'm going to think
unfortunately,
about popping bubbles for a while. We might have to table this discussion and pick it up with popping bubbles.
yes,
So I would love for you and your listeners to actually think about what sort of bubbles have they popped?
yeah, and what is
Metaphorically, literally, figuratively. Just
yeah,
how many bubbles have you ever popped in your lifetime?
oh, a lot, definitely a lot. Very good. All right, Gomer. Well, that's good. So let's leave it here for now. And like you said, we'll talk more about bubbles, and I'll throw that question out to our viewers and see what kind of feedback we get. I appreciate your time today, and we're going to throw it back to Regular Hob over there in the podcast. Take it away, Regular Hob.
I love you, Hav. Have a good day.
You too, buddy. See you later.
Hey, thanks a lot, Interview Hub. So, you now saw and heard the bubble theory that my buddy Gomer has done. His thoughts on it. He's got a lot of it up here, and he's going to be writing it hopefully soon. Then he might be able to get it out there. I was thinking maybe he could do the MUFON circuit and go out with those. And if you don't know what MUFON is, then look it up, and maybe we'll talk about that in one of the episodes. So anyway, so those were his thoughts on and some of my feedback on his bubble theory, and it is close to the some of the bubble theory that we have out there already that you can certainly look up and find. But now we're going to go to the beer section. I don't really have an audio segment, so I was just kind of tying it in for beer. So we can talk about bubbles in beer as well. So what I just learned a week ago when I started doing research on what I was going to do for beer, and I came across this, which was funny enough that I came across this having to do with bubbles, and I just interviewed Gomer like 2 days ago, and he started talking about bubbles. So there certainly are bubbles of CO2 gas in beer. A lot of that comes from the wort when you're doing fermentation, and one of these days we'll get to the part where we start talking about the entire process of beer, which I know is a snooze fest for a lot of people. In fact, you're probably already turning off from this segment and saying, all right, I'm done with Javier for the day. But if you're listening, if you're still listening, so what I found out was that a lot of that CO2, or actually the CO2 is gone by the time it comes to the canning process. So what the brewers do when they're canning, the canning process, they actually insert CO2 into the canning process. So, and then what happens is the CO2, as they call it, they like CO2 hides, basically gets super saturated into the beer itself due to the pressure causing that to happen. And then when you open the beer and it lets out the CO2 out of the liquid, and that's when you get the bubbles, and that's when you get the foamy head. And in the beginning, it was not something that a lot of people were familiar with. However, as time grew by, and we're talking a long time ago, people, especially Americans, wanted that CO2. They wanted to see the bubbles. They connected that with it being fresh. So you'll even see some people sometimes when they say, "Oh, this beer is flat," and it's flat because they're not seeing any CO2 come out of it. Now, chances are it is flat because there's a whole lot of other variables that happen to go along with that, but it's not necessarily flat just because there's no CO2 in it. So there's your little beer tip trivia for the day. So what I'm going to do this time is I did not have an opportunity, and I apologize to the team out at Boutique for doing a fresh new review. So I'm going to give you a double whammy of two beers that I've reviewed in the past. one from March 26th and the 27th. These are actually one is called Bat Country, which is very interesting, and the other one is called Goes Ale, which is also interesting. But I just like to hear Bat Country. So as you notice, I'm gonna start putting, or I did start doing effects in there, and I'm gonna start putting effects here as well. So we'll see how it goes. So I'm gonna take it. Review Hav is gonna take it away. He won't be responding because this is old archive footage of reviews from back in March. So I'm gonna turn it over to him for those two reviews, and then I'll be back. Hey everyone, Javier here again. Today's beer is the Fourth Tap Brewing Co-op Bat Country Cold Brew Coffee Stout. This is done by Fourth Tap Brewing, and it's another one that is available for you at Brewtique. Thanks, team. Brewtique team, by the way, this review is actually of my own opinion. If you have another opinion, alternating, opposite opinion, please post. If you don't like what I think about it, also, maybe suggest others, and I'll start trying to get other ones. I'm going to go out to Brewtique again just to pick up beer at the end of the week. Anyway, so here it is poured. You can see it. Hold it up to the light a little bit. Really dark. This is a stout. It's beautiful in color. Let me try tasting it. You can definitely taste the coffee in this. It is fantastic. As far as stouts go, I would say this is probably, for me, 9 thumbs up. Thanks, and until next time. Hey everyone, Javier here again. This is Thursday. Today I am trying out a Hemp Goes Ale. Hemp Goes Ale. Says it's made with coriander, lemon peel, and hemp seed. Made from coming out of Louisville, Kentucky, it looks like. And I like the bottom where it says touched by wood, brewed with Emma Stone water. So this is a sour, and thanks to the team at Brewtique again for setting up the mystery bag. This is coming from the mystery bag that was marked sour, of course. And so I'm having it, so here it goes. Here's quick look at the body of it. Beautiful color. So now I'm gonna give it a shot. So very good. A little on the high side as far as lemon peel goes. I can definitely taste a little coriander on the finish. Definitely can't taste any of the hemp. So overall, it's a pretty decent beer. And again, if anybody has any opposing opinions, they can certainly post. Thanks to Brewtique again, and this beer I say will be 6 thumbs up. 6 thumbs. Until next time, ciao. Okay, so we're back. So those were the two reviews that I had there, Bat Country and Ghost Ale. I hope that you enjoyed seeing my ineptitude and trying to do some of these reviews. If you do like Bat Country or Ghost Ale, please, I'd love to get additional feedback from individuals. You can post on this YouTube channel. You can post on my Facebook we're friends on Facebook. Let me know what you think. Thanks again for the team out at Brewtique. They're doing a hell of a job out there. They're doing great. Unfortunately, they don't have indoor seating anymore or outdoor seating, but they still have their shop open. Please swing by if you haven't had a chance and talk to the team out there. Tell them what you like, what you don't like, and see what they have to offer as far as something new and original. I myself usually get set in my ways. However, I think the opportunity that I took upon myself to do 100 beers in a row has really opened my eyes to a lot of beers. Now, there's a lot of beers that I'm like, and are not great. And I think you can kind of tell when you hear me talk about them. But a lot of them, a large amount of them, are fantastic. I would certainly buy again. I know once everything opens up again and the Brewtique is open for indoor seating, My brother and some other friends and I are going to be there. I am going to be picking different beers, and I will already know what's there. By no means does that mean I'm not going to find some other beers, and if I find them and they're good, I'm going to be adding them to this podcast as well. So thanks again to the team out of Boutique. If you have a chance, go by. Their bottle shop part of the biz is open, and certainly if you're looking to grab some grub, you can slide on down. Actually, that direction. Slide on down to the Dig Pub, and you can pick up some great pretzels, and which I can no longer have are the French fries, but they have fantastic French fries with a porter mustard that's really fantastic. So check it out. So that's all for this time. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed it. Thanks to Gomer for his theory on bubbles. If you have a chance, go out, make some bubbles, post it, send it to me. I will get it out here online. I'd love to see people making some bubbles out there and doing some of the things that I've been talking about. If you have any more beer suggestions, please post. And any thoughts, comments, suggestions overall, please let me know. I'm always willing to listen to feedback and try to make changes, which I have over the past couple of episodes. And we'll see. I'll be interviewing some more interesting people. If you're interested in being interviewed by me, then certainly drop me a line and I will get around to you. I still have some people in the queue, but I would love to get more interviews. And the more interviews I have, the more I can post and talk about new and interesting things. Okay, so everybody have a good rest of the week, or a good beginning of the week, I should say. And we'll talk again next week. Thanks. Bye.